What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Ben on Sports. Today's episode is something I've been promising I was going to do for all the sports, but I'm actually sticking to my word this time. This is your end of the month April MLB update. Going to be going over a couple things, try and get you out of here as quick as I can while still giving you the information. Just going to kind of look at where the where the MLB stands after a little bit more than a month, but after March and April together. Long way to go still, but figured it'd be nice to do a monthly outlook. So without further ado, let's get into it. Some early storylines. The American League is looking super mid. There's one, maybe two teams that have really good records. Most of the really good records and well performing teams are out in the National League. American League has so many teams that are just within two games plus or minus a 500. Very, very mid. Kind of what I talked about coming in, where I felt like the National League had more World Series contenders, but their bottom was really bad, and the American League was kind of a lot of teams that are close to being contenders, but kind of still in the middle. And that has bared true through the first month. There's a lot of teams that wanted to contend that are struggling to start the year. Teams like the Blue Jays, who made the World Series last year, are off to a slow start. Red Sox, a playoff team from last year, made a whole bunch of moves, have already fired their manager, off to a slow start. The Phillies and Mets, two teams that have been in the playoffs a lot recently, off to very slow starts, two of the worst records in the MLB. So that's already four playoff teams from last year that are in early danger in April. So a lot of these contenders are struggling, maybe some new blood in the playoffs this season. A lot of incredible rookies are making the Rookie of the Year race incredible in both the National League and the American League. Sal Stewart, J.J. Weatherholt, both in the same division. You have Kevin McGonigal. Technically, it counts. Munetaka Murakami coming over from Japan. So many people that I'll get into a little bit later, but there's a lot of rookies and a lot of young players who maybe still don't qualify that I think are breaking out, finding their stride, coming in and being really good players right off the bat, and that's always fun to watch. The walk rate is up significantly. I was looking at walk rate comparison. It was 10% last year. It's up to 16% this year. Maybe part of that's because of ABS and challenging pitches. Maybe it's modern baseball philosophy, but walk rate is up significantly so far to start this season. I find that to be very interesting. I will be interested to see if that trend continues and if that trend happened because ABS. You got to think there's at least partially due to that because I feel like at minimum ABS has a psychological effect on the players, right? Which is kind of my next question. Is ABS making a difference? It's definitely helped some teams. I've watched games from all around the MLB and I have seen examples of teams where it helps them stay in an inning and score a run, or it gets them out of an inning where they otherwise are in trouble. It's definitely making a difference. It's also doing a couple more things that I'll get into a little bit later. And last storyline, what teams are for real? What teams can turn around? I kind of talked about some of the teams that have been in the playoffs and have been contenders and expect to be that way, but there's some teams maybe out of nowhere, maybe outperforming a little bit, almost the entire NL Central. I think is surprising to an extent. The Reds, with how good they are, everybody thought maybe they'd flirt around in wild card, but maybe not winning the division. They have been hot early on, so there's some teams. The A's are leading their division, which isn't necessarily incredibly surprising. They still have some pitching concerns, but there's a lot of teams maybe you wouldn't expect to be leading their division or playing as well as you thought that they have been to start the season. Here are the current standings. I gave you your storylines. Here's your standings in the American League and National League. American League East, supposed to be the best division in baseball coming into the year. They only have two teams over 500. Yankees, far and away the best team in the American League right now at 20-11. The Rays, second place in the East at 18-12. They have the second best record. And then the Orioles have been around 500 all season at 15-16. They're already 5 games back. The Blue Jays, 14-17, kind of rebounding after a really slow start, 6 games back. And the Red Sox are at 12-19, 8 games back, already fired their manager. They got off to a really bad start. Offense struggling early on. American League Central, Tigers are leading it, tied with the Guardians at 16-16. The White Sox not in last. White Sox kind of a fun and frisky team early on. 14 and 17, only a game and a half back. The Twins, 14 and 18, are 2 games back, and the Kansas City Royals at 12 and 19, tied for last in the American League at minus 3.5 games. Or I guess next to last place in the American League, because in the American League West, the A's are leading at 17 and 14. Mariners are a game and a half back at 16 and 16. Rangers at 15 and 16, 2 games back. And then the Astros and Angels are tied at 12 and 20, both 5.5 games back, both tied for the worst record in the American League. As you can see, there's a lot of teams that are just give or take a couple games in either direction of 500. I imagine at some point some of that will spread out. But then again, last year, everybody stayed within 6 or 7 games in the wild card race, it felt like. So we'll see in the American League. National League, every single division leader has at least 20 wins. And in the NL East, the Braves have already opened up the largest lead for first place in all of baseball. They have a 6.5 game lead over the second place Marlins. They're 22 and 10. The Marlins are 15 and 16. Braves only team over 500. The Nationals, 7 games back at 15 and 17. And then maybe two of the bigger surprises of this season, the Phillies and the Mets. The Phillies are 12 and 19, 9.5 back, and the Mets are 10 and 21, 11.5 back. The worst record in baseball, an absolutely horrendous start to the season for them. In the NL Central, the Reds are leading 20 and 11. The Cubs are 1 game back at 19 and 12. The Cardinals are only 2 back at 18 and 13. The Brewers, 16 and 14, are 3.5 back, and the Pirates, 16 and 16 at 4.5 back. Only division in baseball where every team is at or above 500. The Pirates are in last place in the NL Central. In the AL Central, they would be tied for first, but that's how things go. Still plenty of time left. And in the National League West, what a shock, the Dodgers are in first place at 20 and 11. The Padres are just a half game back at 19 and 11. Diamondbacks 3.5 back at 16 and 14. Rockies at 14 and 18, 6.5 back. And the lowly Giants at 13 and 18, 7 games back. Giants not off to the start that they were hoping for, and I kind of never bought them to begin. Still plenty of time left. Again, it's only the end of April. Regular season doesn't end until the end of September. These teams have all played 30, 31, 32 games. It means they have 130 left, so still plenty of time for people to rise and fall, but these are what the standings look like at the end of April. So what am I buying and selling so far? Well, I got 7 things I'm buying and 5 things that I'm selling. I am buying. Number 1, I said this in the MLB preview episode. If you want to go back and listen, I mentioned all 3 of these teams. I said the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, and the Mets, their early struggles. Now, they made the playoffs largely because Fangraphs and Pacoda projections like them. But I said all 3 of those teams I think are going to struggle more than they did last year and are going to be in a bigger fight to make the playoffs. And so far, they have 3 of the worst records in the MLB, the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, and Mets. Obviously, there's time to turn it around, but they can't wait too much longer. There's just obvious holes in some of these teams. I think the Blue Jays have good pitching. Vladimir Guerrero's off to a great start. But I've said it at the beginning of the season, I'm worried about the Blue Jays' depth, and I'm worried about the fact that they had too many guys that I think had the best seasons of their career at once. Usually that means you're going to take a step back, and the Blue Jays have so far. Red Sox, the offense. I was a little bit worried about the Red Sox pitching, and in some ways I was right, but I think the big story is their offense. Their offense has looked brutal. The Mets, I think, there's a lot wrong with the Mets. I'll leave it at that. I am buying the early struggles from those 3 teams. I'm not saying it's possible for them to make the playoffs, but I'm saying I think there's legitimate cause for concern there. The Yankees pitching staff, I'm buying. It might be the best in baseball. Them and a select few teams, the Dodgers, obviously there, but the Yankees already are really, really good, and they haven't even added Garrett Cole. And Luis Gil won Rookie of the Year and has had looked really, really good early on in his career. Send him down to the minors. If he can get it back going again, there's another arm. That Yankees pitching staff is going to be deadly. Young players breaking out. I'm buying it. Yeah, sometimes there might be a little dip as the league gets more scouting on them and they figure out what works and what doesn't. But I think I keep on talking about it. I'll try to stop talking about it as the year goes on. but I really believe that a lot of these young guys, these rookies, these second year players are going to continue their breakouts, and we're going to have a lot of young stars all around the league. I'm buying them. I'm buying ABS strategy. The umpires are still umpiring. There's some that are better than others. There's some games that I watch where they're really bad. Some I watch they're really, really good. And it makes ABS to have a strategy. Does it make sense early in the game when you're up 3-0 to challenge a strike if it's a ball? I don't know. Do certain players have more leeway? Probably. But I'm buying that ABS strategy is good. Now, I don't think that means the umpires shouldn't be doing a good job. I would, in a perfect world, the umpires are always right? That's incredibly difficult, especially with the speed and movement modern day pitchers have. But I do think ABS strategy is real. I think it's good. I do think we need to be careful on social media. Everybody's like, well, why didn't you just challenge it? Well, because there's a strategy behind challenging, and you don't want to have to go to the plate and challenge, right? So I think sometimes ABS makes baseball discussions a little bit unfair or a little bit, well, I don't want to say what I was going to say, but I was going to say non-intellectual. I'll just say a little bit less intellectual and a little bit less understanding. It's not always as simple as you had a challenge left, so why didn't you use it? Well, because it still. Anyway, that's just a personal pet peeve of mine. I don't need to stay on it too long, but I am buying ABS strategy and what it is doing for the game. I'll leave it at that. Trade deadline activity could include some big names, in my opinion. There's a lot of good teams or teams that are expecting to be good with some really high caliber players that are struggling. If they continue to struggle, there could be some really, really big names. One name I'm very interested to see if it continues to go bad for Houston. Does Yordan Alvarez end up on the trading block at the deadline if the Astros are in a bad enough position? That could be a massive deadline pickup for somebody. Still plenty of time, but I think there could be some big names, both pitching and hitting, that become available if some of these teams don't start turning it around. I've kind of hinted at this already. I am buying the National League having more World Series contending teams. Right now, the only team in the American League that looks the part to me is the New York Yankees. And the National League, you have the Dodgers, you have the Braves. I think the Cubs could be there. The Reds, I'm not quite ready to buy them that much, but they have been in an echelon so far with those teams. Maybe the Padres find their way back in there. I'm not sold on them yet. I don't think they're quite that good, but I definitely think the National League has a right to say we have at least 3 World Series contenders, potentially more. And right now, the American League can only say they have 1. National League certainly seems to have more teams at the very, very top of the MLB this season. And I do think the AL wildcard should be crazy because for everything I just said about the National League, their middle is not. I'm not sold on their middle being very good, but I think there's a lot of American League teams that are in the middle and are almost good enough. And I think the wild card race could be 6 to 8 teams going into the last 2 weeks of the season, just like it was last year. And it could just become absolute chaos again. And I'm looking forward to that early on. Selling that the NL Central is all going to finish at or above 500. I think there's some teams that are off the hot starts. I think there's some players that are outperforming. I think there's going to be some teams that hit a cold streak. Maybe 3 of them do, but I don't know if 4 or 5 do. I like the National League Central. There's a lot of young talent. There's a lot of potential in these teams. The Brewers have been really well coached, and they're near the bottom of that division. They're in 4th, and you know that they usually find a way to win games. The Pirates, I said I pumped the brakes on. I said I liked them, but then I think they got overhyped as like that next team. I still think they can finish with the winning record. I trust them to be more consistent. I'm still looking for more from the Reds and the Cardinals. Maybe by the end of May, I will have changed my mind. I think there's a little bit too much variance left in those teams' games. But by the end of May, if you're able to stay there, I think it says a lot. So that's what I will be watching for. I'm selling over analytical plate approaches. Listen, analytics are good and they can help baseball, but at some point, baseball is baseball. I'm tired of 3 outcome hitters. I'm tired of strikeout, walk, or home run. I'm tired of seeing everybody try and pull everything and just everything is a ground ball to first or a ground ball to third. I'm sick and tired of it. At some point, you need to play a little bit of baseball. Move the runners over, steal some bases, put down a bunt. here's a thought: if hit the ball the other way, if that's what the pitcher's giving to you. There's a couple teams that I'm really targeting with this message because some teams I think are well rounded and can play the really analytical. We need to chase exit velo. We need to chase launch angle. We need to hit the ball hard. Some teams I think lean into it too much. Maybe some teams don't do it enough. But being over analytical at the plate, being over analytical from the mound, I think is hurting the talent of some teams. I'm not going to name them quite yet, but I have a list of at least 6 teams that I think it's hurting right now. And listen, I'm always a math guy. I've always been a math guy. I like some of the aspects of math in sports, not just in baseball, but in other sports. But I do think it gets to a point where it's too much. And I think there's some organizations that have gone well past that point. My third thing that I'm selling, Murakami finishing at the rate he currently is. He has been on a torrid pace. Murakami has been absolutely fantastic this season. Went on that long stretch of consecutive game with home runs. He's one of he's like the main reason, in my opinion, the White Sox are as close to 500 as they are. I think eventually the strikeout numbers will creep up and the home runs will go down a little bit. Not because I don't think he's talented, but I do still think as good as the Japanese Baseball League is, as good as the players coming out of Japan are, because they are really good, I still do think there is an adjustment period. And I think Murakami, eventually they're going to catch up to what he's doing with his swing. And eventually this season, it's going to slow him down and his average will drop a little bit. His power numbers will drop. It doesn't just happen to Murakami. Again, I've been talking about these rookies. I just said that there'll probably be a dip with some of these young players because that's just what happens. You come up, you rake, and then guys figure out how to pitch you or what your weaknesses are. And then you have to make adjustments again. And I think Murakami will get to that point. I don't think he's going to finish, right there with Aaron Judge, right there with Yordan Alvarez in terms of power numbers, assuming everybody stays healthy. But I still think he can have a really good Rookie of the Year quality season, not trying to knock the man too much. Number 4, the season being over already for teams that started slow. This is one of the biggest things I hate about baseball. On one hand, it is true the games in March and April count just as much as the games in September. That is 100% true. But you're never out of it this early. I mean, nobody should be more than a couple, like 5 to 7 games back of the wild card. That's just a hot win streak, and you're right there. Anybody can get hot. Anybody can get cold. Now, you can be in a situation where you have lost your room for error. I think every team has decent amount room for room. Margin of error is the phrase I'm looking for. I apologize. Every team has a certain margin of error. Some are bigger, some are smaller. By winning early in the year, you can increase it. But when you lose your margin of error. And there's some teams that I think have lost most, if not all, of their margin of error, but they're not out of it yet. The games still count and they have a big hole, but it is possible to get out of, but you have to get hot pretty soon. So I'm selling that the season is over for teams. Maybe the vibes feel that way. But I don't think your season is ever over until you hit that summer, and then you kind of reevaluate, and then But nobody's season is over at the end of April. Unless you're 15 games out of the playoffs, then maybe it is. But nobody is that far back. And the last thing I'm selling, anybody except the Dodgers running away with their division. There are a couple teams that are starting to run away, and most of them are within a game or two. Even the Dodgers are. The Braves have the biggest advantage. And I do think the Braves will eventually run away. I do think they can. But I'm not ready to give up on the Phillies or the Mets. I still think at least one of them finds a way to get on a winning streak and keep it within 10 games. I don't think that the Nationals and Marlins are going to stay in second and third the entire way through. I think one of those two teams, if not both, finds a way to get it going. So that's why I think somebody will keep it somewhat close with the Braves. I do think maybe the Braves eventually get there. I forgot to put them down on the graphic, but the Dodgers, I think, can run away. Right now, the Padres are close and the Diamondbacks are close, but I don't think that'll last too long, even though I think the Diamondbacks and Padres are playoff caliber teams. But I don't think a lot of teams are going to be running away. I still think the Yankees have a losing streak in them. The Rays are still close to them. The Orioles and Blue Jays are still within shouting distance where they could go on a hot streak and catch them. The AL Central is always chaotic. I'm not even going to bother talking about them. The AL West, everybody is still alive, really. The NL Central, everybody is still alive, and that looks like it's going to be a chaotic division. Right now, I think the MLB is looking at a lot of tight division races, which could make for some fun clinching scenarios for both the wild card and the divisional races near the end of the season. Still plenty of time left, obviously, where that could change. But for now, that's what I'm going to say. And I'm going to continue to update my playoff predictions. Every single update I do, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on them. Maybe it will be an every other type of month type thing. But if you watch the first episode where I previewed the playoffs, I'm not going to give you records. I'm going off of pure vibes of how teams are performing and where I think they can get to performance-wise. But this is my pure vibe seeding and what I think happens after the first month of the season. I think the Yankees grabbed the one in the American League. I think the Mariners continue to rebound. Although I have been right about their stars starting off slow. That was another thing I said to watch out for this season. And certain players on that team that had really good seasons last year aren't having awful seasons, but they aren't having the same start and caliber they did last year. I try not to pat my back too much, but I did have a little discussion with some Mariners fans about it, and they weren't too happy, and I ended up being right. Still think the Mariners recover and get second off the strength of that pitching staff and the fact they play in a pitcher's park and they win their division. And then I think the Tigers finish third and win the AL Central. Two new teams that I didn't have at the start of the season, but I have put in since, like, as a change. The Guardians and the Rays I have taking wild card spots and playing each other in the 4-5. And then I have the Orioles scraping by. Really, that third wild card to me in the American League right now. I really don't like any teams. I see faults in so many and haven't liked the way I've seen stuff that the way every team has started that I don't love. And I had the Orioles there at the beginning of the year, so I'm kind of leaving them there, but I'm not sold on them. I see a world where they have a bad rest of the season as well. Especially when your two best players, Gunnar Henderson and Pete Alonso, are batting below 200. You got to think that gives you hopeful you can get better. But also, if they continue to underperform, it's going to be hard for the role players to carry them for a whole year. But that's a rant for another time. For now, I think they do get it turned around, and the Orioles can grab that last wild card, where they would lose to the Tigers. Tigers go on to face the Mariners in a great pitching duel, where the Tigers would go to the ALCS. I think the Guardians beat the Rays. The Guardians and the Yankees play in the 1 versus 4. Again, these teams see each other in the postseason. Yankees beat the Guardians. And then what should be an excellent pitching, two of the best pitching staffs in all the MLB, because I think pitching is important in September. I think the Yankees have a little bit more reliable offense. Yankees beat the Tigers to go to the World Series. I did have the Mariners at the start of the season, and I have switched it to the Yankees, but I will probably switch it around a lot because monthly predictions a lot can change in a month. And then in the National League, I have 2 new teams in it as well. Everybody else is the same seeds. The 1, 2, 3, and 6 are the same teams at the same seed that I had at the beginning of the season. I really want to put the Reds in, but I'm going to wait 1 more month. If I look stupid for hopping on the train late, then I look stupid for hopping on the train late. But I'd rather be safe than sorry. The 2 teams that I added that I didn't have at the beginning of the season are the Padres at 4 and the Diamondbacks at 5, where I have the Padres winning a 5-game series and then losing to the Dodgers yet again in the playoffs. Then I have an AL Central battle in the other wild card round with the Cubs beating the Brewers and then the Braves beating the Cubs, giving me Braves and Dodgers, which is what I had at the beginning of the season in the NLCS, where I have the Braves finally sending the Dodgers home in the postseason. And then in the Dodgers-Yankees World Series, I have, or not the Dodgers, the Braves-Yankees World Series, I have the Braves beating the Yankees. That's my predictions as of now. Again, I've updated them since my first predictions. I'll update them again at the end of May. But that's where I'm leaving it now. Let me know in the comments below how you feel and who your prediction and who your favorites to win the World Series are. Give me your top 5 favorites to win the World Series in the comments below. And then my award favorites, I will try to get through quick. Some of these are going to match Vegas odds. Some of them aren't. This is me after studying these teams, watching these teams, and who I think can keep at their pace and how I see it moving. Award favorites, AL MVP, shocker, Aaron Judge kind of has a gap right now. Yordan Alvarez, I think there's too much uncertainty about his future, but he's performing like the MVP right now on a really bad Astros team. Jose Ramirez, I don't think gets enough love. He should be top 5 in MVP voting every year. Such a fantastic player that doesn't get talked enough about. And if the Guardians have a good year, I think Jose Ramirez can finish high. Bobby Witt, really good player. A little bit of inconsistency to start the season, but the Royals also have a bad record. That's going to hurt him. And then Gunnar Henderson, if he can get the Orioles into the playoffs, I think he can rise on this list, but he also can't bat below 200, striking out as much as he is. Yes, he has the home runs and the RBIs and the stolen bases, but the average needs to be higher for Gunnar Henderson to have a shot at the award. In the National League, right now, I think it's a two-man race between Ohtani and Acuna. Ohtani and Judge are my two favorites. Big shocker there. But Acuna is back, and when Acuna is playing well, he's just at the same level of importance as those guys. Right now, I think those are the two main horses in the National League. And then bringing up the rest of the pack, Corbin Carroll, who I think has been very important to the Diamondbacks. Maybe he can get some votes if he gets them to the playoffs. And then Schwarber and Soto, I think, are the two best players on their teams. Very good players off to great starts to the season, but unfortunately their teams are so bad, it's going to hurt their case as it stands right now. The AL Cy Young feels like it's Tariq Skubals to win, but so I have him number 1. But Max Fried, I think, is going to be consistent. He was really good last year. He seems to like the Yankees. Jose Soriano is off to a fantastic start and might be the Cy Young if it happened now. I see him falling off a little bit, but he needs to be mentioned because of his fantastic first half for the Angels. I think Jacob deGrom is going to get better and better as the season goes on and remind everybody who he is. Give me Cam Schittler for the Yankees, off to an amazing start. Really been a godsend for that rotation. I think he can continue to the level he's pitched so far. NL Cy Young, big shocker, Paul Skeens. I know the first 4 awards I announced are all the people that won the awards last year, but there's a reason why they're the favorites. I think Chris Sale has the best chance of running Paul Skeens down. His team has been good. He's been good. I think Chris Sale is still going to enjoy some years at the end of his career with these Braves teams. I have 2 Dodgers on this list, Yamamoto at 3, Ohtani at 4. They have both been having fantastic seasons. Can they last the whole season? Pitching is my big question. And then for the Phillies, Christopher Sanchez in 4th. If the Phillies get it turned around, I think Sanchez is going to continue to be a big part of that, and that will win him the award. AL Rookie of the Year. Right now, Murakami and McGonigal are kind of in a class of their own at 1 and 2. Chase DeLauder for the Guardians was right there. He's kind of tailed off as the season has gone on, but he had a great start. Parker Messick, the lone pitcher on this list, has been phenomenal for the Guardians, arguably been the best pitcher in their rotation. If he keeps it up, I think he should win the award. And then Samuel Basallo got off to a slow start, but he's been super hot recently. He has easy power, and if the Orioles get it turned around, I think Basallo can put his name closer and closer to the top of this list. The NL Rookie of the Year award has been absolutely crazy. I think the clear top 3, my favorite is J.J. Weatherholt. Vegas doesn't agree with me, but I think he's the one that's the most likely to continue his trend right now. And then right up there with J.J. Weatherholt, Nolan McLean for the Mets, Sal Stort for the Reds are off to maybe better starts than Weatherholt, but I believe in Weatherholt, so I put him number 1. Connor Griffin is there. He's only going to get better and better. He's 4th by a little bit in his own tier. And then in the 5th tier, this guy I'm just mentioning, because I needed a 5th person. He's clearly the 5th best, but he's below Griffin, certainly below the other 3, is Moises Ballesteros for the catcher for the Cubs. I really think this comes down to the top 3 in the NL. Maybe Connor Griffin runs them down. Let me know what you think about these award favorites in the comments below. That's all I have for you guys today. Please, please, please like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on X. Get on the couch, watch some sports, some great playoff action. Baseball finally back. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Stay safe. It's a crazy world out there. Peace out.